Welcome to East Coast DNA's Road to PEI Music Week. We have another one of the award nominees here today. Welcome, Adam Gallant.
Howdy-o. Thanks for having me, Darcy.
So, Adam, there's a few things I did want to talk to you about, besides the fact that you were a nominee. But I do want to start off by congratulating you on the nomination for Recording Sector.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thanks for your work here doing these interviews. It's super cool. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate the recognition, so I will take that moment to thank you. But I haven't really interviewed anyone from the perspective of recording sector specifically. I did want to try to diversify a little bit for who I was going to interview for the way the nominations go. I think that some of the industry awards probably don't get highlighted as much as they should in some cases. But your name is well known out there. Uh, Everybody knows who Adam Glant is from one way or another. I haven't really dove into why, but everyone knows your name immediately.
Cool.
But
Hope it's
you
good.
I do know that despite the fact that this is a Prince Edward Island award, that you have a history that extends into other regions as well. So are you originally from Nova Scotia or Prince Edward Island?
I am born and raised on Prince Edward Island, a
Okay.
little town called Sherwood. I did go
Yeah.
to college at Nova Scotia Community College, so
Yeah.
big shout out to that school and the instructors there, Michael Ryan, Terry Pulliam, at the time when I took it in 2007, maybe? I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, I am from PEI, grew up here, and then I lived in London, England for a year, lived in Montreal where I moved to play with a band or to make it big with a band in the big
Yeah.
city. And then we lived in Toronto for a year. And when I was in Toronto, on a day in Toronto, I got a job at the Second Cup on Queen Street and a job at a recording studio in Prince Edward Island. So I
Oh,
opted to take the job with Paul Milner at a studio called Shell Lane, yeah, not be a barista in Toronto, but rather be an audio engineer, technician, producer, whatever I do
amazing.
on Prince Edward Island. Yeah, so kind of a fun little story there.
That is. So that was something I was curious about because I knew that you're a musician as well, which myself, I get asked that question a lot because I interview so many people like yourself. But I don't actually play anything. I spend all my time getting the stories about the people that are creating stuff. So I really do appreciate that most of the people I'm talking to have various musical talents, but you did start off as a musician.
That is right. Yeah, I no longer claim to be one, but
Hmm.
yeah, a recovering musician, maybe.
Fair, fair, fair. So I guess that you found your sweet spot for where you wanted to be, but was that transition, besides the fact that you were taking advantage of an opportunity that, as you just laid out, seems almost like an obvious opportunity to take? Um, was that something that when you were focused on being a musician that you kind of dabbled in recording and wanted to maybe work in a studio back then? Like, was that always kind of the game plan?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was. I appreciate the question. Yeah, it wasn't always the game plan, but when I was in like junior high and high school, we got like I was in bands and stuff and got exposed to like cassette recording, and that was like the biggest dopamine rush of my youth, essentially. And
Yeah,
it kind of luckily didn't start to taper till my middle age.
fair, fair, yeah. So, did you also maybe gravitate towards some of the maybe theatrical productions in your school years or any of the drama stuff?
Oh yeah, another great question. Yeah, I totally did, and it was very influential. It's something I often kind of block from my past because it's somewhat embarrassing when I think about it. But like, I had close friends who encouraged me to join the musical at high school where I went, Charlottetown Rural High. There was a musical, and I had close friends who were like, "You should audition for the musical," and that completely changed the trajectory of my life
Yeah.
100%. I really enjoyed it, and that community was like for some reason happy to see me there,
Yeah.
which was great. And that turned into me meeting a lot of people that led me down a path of meeting people who were employed in the music industry. Like, like the theater world got me into a little kind of a theater gig, acting as Gilbert Blythe in like this tourism thing called Avonlea
That's fun.
Village. And then I met people there who eventually I came to know, like Tara McLean and her whole crew in Ontario, and that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that, like music is a job, and there's lots of jobs within it, and that was very, very much influential for me when I was in my 18, 19, before I went to college at Nova Scotia Community College, and it informed my decision to go to music college for sure, or recording arts college, I should say.
Now, see, I do always like when I see that overlap between the artistic communities, but the reason that I really wanted to ask about that is outside of the music piece, which is the obvious piece to talk about, you have an extensive list on Internet Movie Database as well.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I love the research.
So yeah, you've done the film work. So how do you find like working with that versus like mixing a brand new single for someone versus trying to capture something for film?
Ooh, yeah, great question. Yeah, there's a huge difference, and I should say that like the production side of film, I'm no longer engaged with.
Hmm.
And that was wildly challenging. I was like essentially like a one man boom op mixer for a lot of films and video projects that were coming up when the film industry was just emerging on PEI. So things like Poggy
Yeah.
Beach and Just Passing Through. Like, I'm really lucky to have been a part of those productions, and then eventually kind of steered away from the production and got into the post production of the film. So it's now I'll occasionally, maybe 2 times a year, I'll do like a post edit mix sound design for some like of these Bell 5 series or small independent art films or videos. So the difference like is well, I'd say that's wildly different and wildly the same. I don't know. Yeah, the film stuff definitely feels more technical. Like it feels like I'm
Hmm.
kind of surveying things and inserting story when it's needed. And then the music stuff kind of sometimes feels like it's inversely happening, where I'm trying to really reinforce the story or let the music kind of dictate to me where the kind of creative spark needs to occur or could be transitioned. Like I think my role as a engineer producer is often like to try to help people kind of explore the space that's available to them, as opposed to be like, this is what it could be, this is what it is. It's like, this is what it could be, and it could be all these other things too. Whereas the film world, I feel like they're like, we need it by this date, it needs to be this
Yeah.
spec, and we need these stems. And I'm like, okay, it's time to like strap myself to a chair and work, for as kind of hard and fast as I can. And I do think it's a real privilege to be able to do both of those jobs. But the film one, I appreciate and love because it often subsidizes the music work. Where a lot of the musicians
Sure.
I service, they don't have big budgets, but
Hmm.
occasionally these video productions, they do have a budget, and I can maintain kind of a livable wage by every now and again taking one of these projects and really giving it my all.
That makes sense. And I don't think some people realize how much the nuance of what you're hearing when you're watching like a short film or if you're watching a show on CBC or something, like you don't realize how much those little sounds in the background are building the story in your head and telling the story for you rather than just what you're seeing with your eyes. 'Cause if you mute some of those shows, you have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, there's a lot of like early on when I was being trained on it, they'd be like, if you don't notice the work, it can be a sign of good work, especially in
Hmm.
the context of like documentary, that kind of stuff. But when it comes to kind of narrative stuff, I think you can get away with a lot of kind of insanity in the sound world now
Yeah.
more than maybe 20 years ago.
Now, when I was researching, and I didn't go too far down this path to figure it out because I just wanted to ask you
Sweet, yeah.
yourself, a name that popped up in association with you along your career was Greg Wells.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
2017, yeah, we went to like a mix with the master's seminar. Myself and Colin Buchanan, who's a fellow recording engineer producer in Charlottetown, who's also nominated for the Music PEI Recording Sector Award.
mhm.
I would plug the sponsor, but I forget who it is. But we appreciate the sponsorships. So yeah, Greg Wells, lucky to have gone to that. So if anybody doesn't know what these things are, mixed with the masters, if anyone's in the music world, like an absolutely amazing, valuable thing to be able to go do. So they host these week-long seminars. It's hosted. They have a studio in Paris and a studio in France. They do the week-long ones are in France at a studio called La Fabrique, which is an incredible studio. I don't know if have you ever looked it up. It's like just
No.
the sights of it. It's worth like Googling right now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
gorgeous place. It used to be like a textile factory or something, and it's now this
Okay.
mansion with all these rooms. And you go there, and 20 participants sleep on site. They feed you, and for like 9 hours a day, you go into this world-class studio, and the greatest music makers in the history of recorded music teach you about their career paths, and they take your work and kind of dissect it. And I was lucky enough to do this twice. Okay, so the first time we went in 2017. I appreciate the question. Like I'm now just going to ramble on about this for way too long. 2017 went. It was a Greg Wells and Andrew Sheps, like two of the really influential music makers, and kind of like, you know, Andrew Sheps is a technician, an engineer, and a producer, and an amazing educator. And Greg Wells is like an inspired, incredible guy who, if you follow on social media right now, his studio just burned down in Palisades in the LA fires, and he's just an inspiring guy. But all that's to say, I went again in 2023, and I did another one of these week-long seminars funded by Canada Council, which was also incredible. Sean Everett, who's like, you know, I didn't really know much about Greg Wells' music background when we went to that first one in 2017, but 2023, I went and like, Sean Everett he produced the War on Drugs, my favorite band. Like, it's crazy to see him open a session of War on Drugs and be like, this is how we got that sound. And like, changed the way I hear music. It was like in an instant, I heard everything I heard changed. And it was just a wild transformation. So I've been kind of adapting Sean's kind of approach these days, which has been just wildly challenging and fun. And also, like, I read Rick Rubin's book, and I kind of threw it. Everything I used to do pre-2023 is kind of in the garbage right now. I've reinvented my creative process like in a really, really exciting and fun way, and challenging way. And yeah, sometimes it leads to better work, sometimes it leads to worse work, but it's definitely a lot more engaging than it was maybe in 2021, let's say, for whatever reason.
So that actually is probably a good segue, and it's been a good year for you if you're being nominated. So I did want to maybe take a moment to focus on what highlights you have to share from 2024. What were the key moments for you?
Cool. Yeah, appreciate to ask. It's kind of hard for me to pull up what's been going on, so I'm literally looking at my portfolio right now to tell you what happened last year. I'm pretty much focused on like what's happening today and not
Yeah, while you're
2 days ago.
I'm guilty of the same kind of thing
Oh,
where
sweet.
I've been threatening of doing the audio version of this format has kind of disappeared for the last couple of months because I was going to change the format, and it legit was I was going to do a recap, and I couldn't tell you how many things I've done since the beginning of the year now. It's every day, so I need to sit down and script something before I could actually talk about it this time. So
Yeah, I totally get that. It's funny
amazing
when
problem.
yeah, definitely a good problem to have. And I think if you had told me like when I was 18, like, hey, when you're working in music, you actually have to do a high volume of work, I wouldn't have believed you. Because like, you know, we grew up in the 90s and 80s, and it was like there was big budgets, and you'd hear of people like they produced one big record, and then there was like, yeah, they produce a couple records every few years. Now it's like you got to churn out a few records a year, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it can be like the volume of work is surprising to me, and I definitely think that in 2017 when we're at this mix with the masters things with Greg, he also kind of conveyed that, you know, like not everything's a hit, and he's working every day, so it's like, oh yeah, you just don't hear about the kind of mid-grade stuff that essentially pays the bills and keeps you
Yeah.
trained up on how to actually do this job,
Yeah.
which is constantly changing. But in terms of 2024, I'm going to just open my
Yeah.
portfolio and kind of rhyme off some stuff. I believe this happened in 2024. Dylan Menzies released North American Dream Kid. We worked on that for quite some time, so it was probably just a small bit of 2024 where we finalized it. But that album incorporated a lot of these techniques that I learned from Sean Everett. That was a big deal for me. That might be one of the, I think, best things I've ever worked on. 2024, Aaron Camo, who's a guy who moved here from Ontario and just actually about a week ago moved back to Toronto. I was lucky enough to get to work with him an album he released. And again, was this released 2024? Like I can't even remember, but got to mix this Infinity Trials
They're both
record.
nominated, so
Okay, great.
this is a good pattern. I'm loving hearing it.
Okay, sweet. We're on point here. And then again, super lucky to have been asked by Logan and Shane Pendergast, Logan Richard and Shane Pendergast, to work on Shane's album Winter Grace.
Mhm.
That thing is a beast, and like the kind of record where like we're working on it alone, mixing, printing stuff, tape, just tears, down my face. Like there's some potent stuff in there from Shane. So lucky to
Yeah.
have been a part of that.
For anyone watching this series, just a quick plug for Shane. He actually reached out and we featured him before I began this series.
Oh, sweet.
So even though you're continuing with people that are all nominated, so that's just that's another note that if you're working with all of the people that were nominated, obviously there's a good solid body of work there. But yeah, there's another episode out there if people want to go look for Shane Pendergast where we talk about that album.
And Shane is such a well-spoken guy, and everything he creates comes from such a great place that is truly Shane. It's like, yeah. And I actually worked with Shane's dad at Avonlea Village back in the day,
Oh, cool.
Michael Pendergast, and there's songs on this record about his dad called Music Man. And that song, like, yeah, just imagining, me being at Avonlea Village, Shane pulling up in this blue minivan, and me not knowing in 20 years I'd be like making this record alongside him. It's just like everything about it is just kind of mind blowing. But yeah, you're right. I should say, like, yeah, a lot of these people are nominated, and I'm really, really, really lucky to work with them. PEI's got a very small music industry, and I encourage people who are maybe not so interested in the Music Industry Association to give it a try. Like Music PEI will fund your projects. It's worth becoming a member. It's worth becoming a member of the community. I'm not the best member of the community, but in terms of like participation, but I'm definitely lucky to be receiving the work that is facilitated and supported by Music PEI.
So for 2025, I'm sure there's many more things that you could note from the past year too, but going into the rest of 2025 with a nomination in your back pocket and potentially the award itself, do you have plans for the upcoming year? Is there projects that you're already working on that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. Right now I'm mixing an EP or two EPs for a band out of Montreal called Pillowhead. I'm lucky to be getting that gig. Super fun. Space Bud, I'm mixing a couple EPs. They're a local PEI group. I start in on a Bell 5 series, another one of these TV shows doing
Cool.
sound edit, design, and mix. I start that actually this week. What else is coming down the pipes? I'm literally opening my calendar. I've been working with a guy, Oscar Kemp. We've been working on what was an an LP that I've shaved down to an EP. My
Okay.
apologies, Oscar, but the material is strong, and we're only putting out the strongest, which is kind of part of my new ethos. Is like everything's the best of.
Yeah.
And then yeah, looking forward to Music PI Week. That's all that's coming up 2025 that I know of so far. Sometimes things just hop in my lap and I jump on them. Just did a single with Tara McLean last week. I don't know if I should say that, but it's out there now.
Amazing. I'm going to be looking forward to hearing all of those actually. Spacebed's new to me, just as I've been researching, getting ready to go over to Music PI. So if any of that group happens to be watching this, reach out to me. I'd be happy to feature on here. I'm listening to your music when I'm off air. So I'm already doing the research. So just reach out and we'll hook you up.
Nice. So where are you based?
I'm actually, this is confusing for people because
Okay.
I'm all over the East Coast, but I technically live in Pictou County in Nova Scotia.
Oh, sweet.
So I'm in the other Naglasco.
Yes. Do you know Andrew Bardauskas?
I don't. I feel like I should.
He played with me in a band, the band that we went to Montreal with.
Okay.
Side tangent. And then what else was I going to ask you? So you are coming over for Music
Yes.
PI Week. Oh, great. Sweet.
Yes.
Let's connect.
Well, and that's something I have been asking everyone that's been in this series so far too. When I do go over, I do have a couple trips planned over to Prince Edward Island this year. So aside from the cool bands, which I'm getting quite the long list of contacts now.
Yes.
So outside of just specifically artists, I'm looking for maybe places that I might want to visit while I'm on the island that are not typically what I'm getting from maybe the tourism guides or things that I've been going to since I was a small child. I'm sure there's some venues and eateries. A lot of people have an eclectic taste for food over there.
Right, that's true. I like to, I'm going to give my plug for my two favorite restaurants, Maid Marian's in Sherwood, which is like a diner and an
Yeah,
institution. Have you heard of it? Have you been there?
I've heard of it, but I don't believe I've eaten there, so I'll have to
Okay.
add that to the list.
Worth checking out. And then Leonard's Cafe, which is kind of just a cute little cafe in downtown Charlottetown. Those are my two faves for anyone who
Amazing.
didn't ask.
Right. And now I'm curious, and this might be a little not of a standard question for something while we're recording, but if I were an artist out there that was looking to work with someone like yourself, how do people get in contact with Adam Gallant, or where should they be following you online? I know the studio has its own web page, but what's the best way to interact with you and find out what's going on year round?
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate the question. I am not super active on social media. The best way for people to get a hold of me is to email me, and my email's on my website. So if you just go to adamgallant.ca, it's like a portfolio. My email's listed there. I love cold emails. I engage with people on email, and it's my best way to talk to people because I can kind of take my time. And my favorite way for people to kind of cold email me is when they've got a kind of a list of songs, and I'll listen through as many songs as people have essentially, and kind of come up with like my favorites and
Hmm.
talk about stuff before we even kind of get into the nitty gritty work. But I love getting cold emails, and I love hearing new music for people who are like, hey, you want to try get to work together? It's just like that's a very fun part of my job is the novelty side of it. So thanks for the question.
That's amazing because I don't ever really talk about that aspect from my side either. But a lot of people I used to reach out through Instagram because it's where everyone is. But I don't like making a schedule through Instagram messages. So
Yeah,
I'm an email guy myself. So if a band the same as what you're saying, if somebody just grabs the East Coast DNA podcast email and sends me an EPK and says, I want to promote this new single, I'm immediately going to go listen to that. And
nice.
there's like a 99% chance that I'm going to end up doing a future episode with them. Like, if you write me on Instagram, I will engage. I'm not going to write you if I'm in the middle of something. And I might forget if I catch you while I'm having a coffee or something. But email, I don't respond or read an email unless I'm ready to sit down and actually digest what they're saying. So,
I love
yeah.
that. Yeah, like it's a bit more kind of intentional and focused.
Yeah.
By the sounds of what you're saying, I like that a lot.
Absolutely. So yeah, I've been saying it to everyone as we go along. So I'm going to run out of time when I'm on site, but I definitely would like to catch up with you when I'm there in person.
Definitely, let's do it.
And for anyone out there that isn't already subscribed to East Coast DNA, please do so. It really does. Like, obviously, I like to see my ego get inflated a little bit out there, but it really does help the artists that I'm covering on here. So the more exposure I can bring to them through my channel, the more artists that are going to come on here, so I can bring more new music to everybody. So please follow along, and Adam, stay in touch because I do want to hear more about those projects that you have coming up, and I am excited to. It sounds like you're on a good wave of momentum with everything that you're doing there. So I am excited to hear what the next things are going to sound like. If you're striving to be better than all of these people that get nominated, then I'm really excited to see what the next year has for you.
I appreciate that so much, and thanks for what you're doing here. It's super important, and I think this type of format is underrepresented right now on the East Coast specifically. So, huge kudos to you for doing this and taking the time and putting in this kind of immense amount of work.
Well, I thank you. And I should also, even though you have already, I should give a quick shout out to Music PEI because they've been very easy to deal with through this whole
Sweet.
process. So I'm very excited to continue to collaborate with them as well. And hopefully, I'll see lots of the viewers out there on site for Music Week this year.
I'm sure you will.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And see you all soon.
Bye bye.